Welcome to Wheel of Mind, the Wheel of Time point of view reread podcast. This season, we're reading Matt Cawthon's perspective. I'm your co-host, Lajara Dane of the White Aja.
Hi, and I'm Giskel Simris, a scholar from Ilion. Now, today's podcast is 100% organic and contains no fillers or preservatives, which means that things will spoil. You see what I did there, Lajara?
Yeah.
Never mind. Seriously, folks, sometimes we do reference the heavier foreshadowings and other things that are in these novels, so if you've not read the entire series, please do so before listening to this podcast, as we will drop spoilers occasionally with no further warning. So today we're looking at chapters 32 and 40 of Matt Cawthon's perspective of the Dragon Reborn. Lajara, would you please get us started?
Sure. Chapter 32 is called The First Ship. Matt and Tom arrive at the docks and see a ship about to leave, and it's one of the most beautiful sights Matt has ever seen. He doesn't care what the ship is called, where it's headed, what it looks like, but it's leaving right now. As they approach it, the dockmaster stops Matt, saying he's seen a drawing of him, and he's not going anywhere. Tom, meanwhile, is too drunk to keep his befuddlement to himself. "You mean you didn't get the memo?" Matt says to the dockmaster as he shows him his get-out-of-jail-free card signed by the Armelin, given to him by Nynaeve. He also sprinkles in a little, let's say, truth enhancement, saying he's on the business of the Armelin. Although the dockmaster buys it, it's too late to stop the Grey Gull from leaving. Matt throws his quarterstaff onto the ship first and leaps after it, sparing not a look to see if Tom is following. Unfortunately, the Gleeman's staff did not make the leap as Matt's did, but the Gleeman himself did. And their next problem is a captain ordering them thrown overboard. A little money and the Armelin's writ waved in his face seemed to placate the captain enough to avoid violence. But now there's the matter of room, board, and fare for passage. There are no rooms left. They'll have to sleep on the decks and eat with the crew. And even for that, the price is outrageous. Tom tries to earn their way by entertaining the crew, but the captain is having none of it. The captain laughs as he charges an outrageous price, 10 crowns. If Matt is good for it, the captain boasts he'll give them his own cabin, his own meals, and he himself will move in with the passengers. Terran Captain Juan Malia does not know who he's dealing with. Matrim, I'm no bloody Lord Cawthon, pays him the 10 crowns in Andorran weight and generously offers to let the captain eat with them in their cabin. Matt listens to every detail Captain Malia talks about, because you can never know too much about who you're dealing with. Malia, still disbelieving that Matt is not a lord, rambles on about the flaws of every country but Tyr, and begrudgingly takes it a bit easy on Andor as well, once he knows that Matt is headed to Erangel. He has a lot of praise for the High Lords of Tyr, especially High Lord Salmon. He's such a moving speaker, High Lord Salmon, with a lot of promises about enslaving the citizens of Ilion and committing genocide against Aes Sedai. Matt can't resist needling the man a bit, asking him to imagine sparing around a dozen Aes Sedai to bring to the Stone of Tyr. That offends the captain pretty quickly, and the man leaves them alone. Tom remarks on how strange it is that he hasn't heard of this new High Lord, but Matt isn't fazed, underestimating Tom's political knowledge. Matt is beginning to think he isn't that lucky, since he's billed himself as being on the White Tower business, bullying and buying his way onto a ship that happens to be captained by a vehement anti-channeler. Just to test it out, he tries the dice. He doesn't always seem to be winning now. Tom believes they're rigged dice and the reason Matt has to flee town, but Matt insists it's the luck, not the dice, that won him all this gold. The Gleeman is also suspicious about the Amerlin's mandate he carries, but Matt can't tell him any more about that. Nynaeve didn't say where she got it. Tom gives up trying to ferret out what in the light is happening here, and Matt is soon kept awake by his snoring. Matt hears a noise outside their cabin door, tries to wake Tom but fails, and Matt readies himself for whoever is about to break through. He kills the man with a staff jab, grabs his cloak, and begins to impersonate one of the would-be assassins to another one of them. Matt incapacitates one more near the tiller, and Tom takes out another with a thrown knife, a man Matt swore he wasn't aware of at all before a lantern illuminates the body. They look over the side and find more men who had mentioned the Great Lord in a boat tied to the Grey Gull. When Tom loudly contemplates killing them, they jump overboard instead. Malia is now on deck, shouting about what his crew are doing, running them aground, shouting about all the dead men, about brigands, and then more softly expressing his surprise about Matt. He didn't know Andor employed assassins, but this one is cold to have killed so many men like that. Cold indeed. And thus ends Matt's point of view in chapter 32, The First Ship. The rest of the chapter is from a rare for this book, Rand point of view, in which he is too afraid to sleep due to the supernaturally evil dreams with which he's been haunted. And that's it. I don't really have anything about Rand's perspective other than just to say that it was there.
Right. Same thing. I skipped it as well. You were right when you said most of these Matt point of view chapters are constant action. It's like watching the movie Speed. It gets started and it just doesn't let up, and you get this adrenaline rush, and then you think, okay, it's about to relax now, and they kick it up another notch. It just keeps going. And I like that, even though we didn't confer on this point before, you used Matt's middle name. You see, this chapter is the first one where we're introduced to Matt's middle name.
Mm-hmm.
It's Matrim, I'm no bloody lord, Cawthon.
There we go.
Because the captain kind of sees the way he's acting, says, well, he to himself is more like, well, he's talks like a country bumpkin, but he carries himself like a lord, and he has all this money. So he asks him, are you a lord? And that's something that is the first time we run into it, where Matt has to start telling people, I'm no lord. Or at least the first time I recall it in the series.
Mm-hmm.
But you could tell why. And it's because it's more plausible to think here is a rich young lord trying to disguise himself as a country bumpkin, rather than say here's a country bumpkin who A, has all this money, and B, carries himself with such confidence. And I think that's really the thing that gives him this aura of being a lord, or being royalty in some way, though his speech belies it, though the way he walks belies it. And for those of you who've never noticed, a country boy walks different than someone raised in the city. We just do. I remember my dad telling me one time as a boy that I walked like a plowboy, like I was walking behind a mule. I had to kind of learn to pace myself a little differently. And it's just things you learn growing up on farms, and you have to learn to do a little differently in other settings. But so I imagine Matt not fitting in, yet to carry himself with such confidence, to have such money, that's what everybody thinks about him. And I think the confidence is probably the biggest part of it. I think especially now that confidence is a false bravado. It's a face he's putting before the world, kind of an I don't care attitude, and he can just relax and enjoy things. And later it becomes more of his own persona, or at least I think so. That's my take on it. But right now, I think that's just more of a bravado he's putting forward, trying to act confident and cool, and he's just chill all the time. But we know that's really not the case. So one thing I would like to bring up too is the uncomfortable situation they found themselves in when talking to the captain.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this because I found myself in similar situations, not with the same subject matter, of course, but when you're speaking to someone and they are so bigoted in their points of view and so loud with it, the captain just starts talking about how all the Aes Sedai should be hunted down and killed, and the Illianers, they should be, their country destroyed, razed to the ground, the ground salted, they should all be carried off in chains. And it's not just that he has these points of view, but he's so vocal about it. And sometimes you find yourself in that situation, and I really just imagine Tom and Matt just kind of cutting their eyes over one another. Like, is this dude for real? Because we've probably, everyone has found themselves in a situation where you run across someone who is so vocal and so bigoted, and it's just uncomfortable. And I found myself feeling uncomfortable for the two of them standing there on deck, listening to this tirade by this man, because it's so so obviously false. It's so obviously, something is weird and wrong about this. And then, of course, due to Tom's hesitation in about the Lord Salmon. I've never heard of the High Lord Salmon, and I know all of the High Lords of Tyr, and I know all of the royalty everywhere. Surely they didn't raise up a new one. And he starts going through this, really trying to understand how this man could be so powerful and influential. I don't know why nobody puts that information together with the fact that the Forsaken are loose, because I don't know. Is Matt even aware of that?
Well, Matt was at the Eye. He should know, but I don't know that he knows about this pattern yet of what it looks like when a Forsaken takes over a city.
Okay.
Matt is probably just like, you don't know every ruler's name. Like, he really
Yes.
thinks Tom is
Yes.
probably just exaggerating his knowledge of politics.
Right.
And he doesn't
Right.
know Tom's background enough to know. Well, no, I guess they do by this point. They learned from Master Gill, I think, at one point. Anyway, let me backtrack there a little bit. I think that, yeah, Matt probably just underestimates Tom's political knowledge. And
Right.
to be fair, the first two Forsaken running a city that we learn about are Belal and Tyr. There's this
Yes.
High Lord Salmon, and then Samael is an Ilian, and I don't remember what he's calling himself. But we find out both of those in this book when we're with
Right.
Moiraine and Perrin. So
Right. Right.
we don't know yet what it looks like when you go into those cities and everyone seems weirdly brainwashed about this leader that just showed up a few days ago. I think in one case, having all the same dreams, and everyone, you get there and everyone just looks really beaten down and stuff. So from the reader's perspective, it's like, are you kidding me? Who else could Salmon be? I mean, just start crossing
Right.
off
Right.
which Forsaken he can't be to figure it out, you know?
Yes. Yes.
But Matt, even though he knows the Forsaken are loose, he does not think about these bigger issues very much at all. In Matt's thoughts,
Well, that's true.
he likes to move around and circle around as wide as he can of any topics about the fate of the world,
Right.
about
Yeah,
the
that's
fact that
correct.
one of his best friends is a channeler. Perrin's got something else going on, and that Matt himself, he doesn't even want to acknowledge his own connections to his past lives and speaking the old tongue.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's true. I should have thought of that, that. With his personality, he's just going to avoid these bigger issues anyway.
Yeah, so even if it
But
is
yeah.
obvious, he's very much in denial about a lot of things.
Right. Oh yeah. Very, very intriguing. I also like to picture in my mind when they're in their room and Tom is asking about the all the gold. How'd you get that? Of course, see, Matt's playing with the dice and he's rolling the what they call the dark one's eyes. 5 1s every time. Does it 3 times in a row. And
Hmm.
Tom accuses him of having weighted dice. And about the Amerlin's letter, and he's trying to explain, well, really don't know much more than you do. They just gave it to me. And in my mind, I picture Tom's expression, and I can't help it. It's in Obi-Wan in the Mos Eisley Cantina when Han Solo is saying, "Well, my ship made the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs," and Obi-Wan gives him this look that it's almost a smile, but you can see, I don't. You are so full of crap. I do not believe you.
Yeah.
Without saying a word, you just see that expression. That's the exact expression I picture on Tom at this moment. Like, okay, yeah, there we go. I'll drop the subject if you don't want to talk about it. If you don't want to tell me the truth.
Yeah, it's one of those
Um,
situations where Matt's being completely honest, but because
yes.
because sometimes he is not honest in the fact that, like we said before, he's a prankster, and because
Right,
sometimes also he does tell little lies to get himself out of sticky situations. So,
right, right,
the person who doesn't have access to his thoughts doesn't know when to trust Matt or not. They really buy
right,
into that persona you keep talking about that he has of being so roguish. And so
right.
it only makes sense that Tom wouldn't believe him here. But I think, like we've already talked about, Matt is not very self-aware of what people should or shouldn't know about him. Like, he doesn't seem to realize their impressions of him are pretty reasonable based on the evidence that they have. He was just waving
Right,
this thing in the Dockmaster's face saying, we're on the business of the Amerlin. So you
right.
could ask her about this if you want to, but I don't think she's going to be happy. So we're going to be on that ship. So, of
Yeah,
course, Tom knows that that's not exactly true
right,
either.
right. Yeah, you can deduce that pretty quickly. But it's almost like if Matt is just standing there telling you something, you're a friend or whatever, then he's typically going to tell the truth.
Hmm.
If there's a situation where there's a negotiation, I'm getting on that ship, or once he's on the ship and he's with the captain, well, here's the price. If it's a negotiation, he will exaggerate. He will stretch the truth. He will take the truth and make it into Stretch Armstrong, and you will not recognize it when he's finished with it. He will flat out lie if it's a negotiation. If it's a discussion, he tends to be more forthright and honest. But anything that can be construed as a negotiation in any way, yeah, the truth is gone. It just blew away in the wind, and you can't find it.
There's a lot of just funny quotes in this one. So once they are talking to the captain, explaining the important business that they're on behalf of the Amerlin, supposedly, and that they can afford these rooms and that they need the best accommodations possible, Tom is he can't hide just how floored he is by how willing Matt seems to be to pay those types of prices. And he goes, Matt, I'm the one who's supposed to be drunk here.
Right, right. And in Matt's assessment of the captain, he instantly makes this assessment. He's the kind of man, if you don't run all over him, he will run all over you.
Yeah.
You know, he'll steal your pants from you, make you think he's doing you a favor or something like that. Just a quote. I can't remember it exactly, but yeah. So he judges the captain's personality, and that's why instead of just trying to negotiate for passage, then he starts making these huge, incredible demands. You know, your room. The captain mentioned it first, but then Matt just takes it seriously.
Yeah.
Because anything you say during a negotiation is open for literal interpretation with Matt. What he says is not open for literal interpretation, but what you say definitely is. So I love that. Just, you know, oh, you can have my cabin, eat my food if you. Well, Matt starts throwing out gold. Well, here, let's do it. You know.
You're welcome to share your meals with us in
Yeah.
our cabin now, Captain.
Yes, yes. Love that. And it's so awesome because at that point, the captain has to do it or he looks like a liar in front of all of his men,
Yeah.
you know. And so Matt just, he corners him with that instead of laughing like the joke it was meant as. Another quote, because you said there are some great quotes in here, when Tom goes to sleep first, is kind of regrettable because he says, he snores like a wood rasp working on an oak knot. If you've ever used hand tools on old lumber, you know that sound. So that was just some of the great descriptions that go on in these, some of the great quotes.
There's another one where after Matt has already offended the captain to get him to leave by saying, hey, yeah, why don't we spare a few of those Aes Sedai and bring them in the Stone of Tyr? Wouldn't that be funny?
Yeah.
Then Tom is upset at him for doing that. And he says, maybe next you should try telling the Lord Captain Commander of the White Cloaks he should marry the Amerlin seat. Which is funny because at this point in the story, Egwene is still really into Galad, who does become Lord Captain Commander of the White Cloaks. And at some point in this story, he switches the brothers' roles. He had originally named them with the different names, and then he went back and swapped it all. And I think it's maybe in the next book where Egwene starts just dreaming about Gawain and deciding that she likes him and seeing how much he likes her in his dreams. Okay. But before, like up until this point, she's really stuck on Galad. And so I think that may have been abandoned foreshadowing for an actual pairing later on, was that she was going to marry Galad because she does become the Amerlin and he does become Lord Captain Commander of the White Cloaks.
Right. I completely missed that little bit of foreshadowing with that joke that Tom threw out there. But I'm sure RJ meant it. That's exactly what it sounds like. That is so cool. I'm glad you caught that one.
And one more, speaking of the Andoran royal family, not really a quote so much as just, I love the way Matt is sitting there thinking out loud after Tom has gone to sleep, thinking about what an idiot he is to have made this bargain with the women to get here. He's like, I was so eager to get out of Tar Valon. I didn't even think about the fact that they could have just had a warder do this or something. He's like, he does this Elaine mocking voice. He's like, take a letter to my mother, Matt. They would have gotten a warder to do that, dummy. Why did I fall for that? But I can just hear him doing that, hearing him do a little mocking Elaine voice.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I hope they're able to work that into the show.
I know.
That is just perfect, Matt. And when you see some of the more human side of him, because once things have gotten quiet and it's slowed down, he's laying there listening to Tom sleep, and it starts hitting him that he'd killed a man. Now, you know, it's one of those things that's like his thoughts were able to just keep going, keep moving with the moment, you know, just keep swimming kind of thing. But once things get quiet, you know, it hits him. He has killed a man. He'd never done anything like that before. And it was also part of Matt's luck that he was dwelling on it, that he did have that bit of quiet moment, because that's the point where the assassins came on board the ship, and he heard a little scuffle, but he's like, well, you're always hearing noises on the ship. and then you hear the stealthy footsteps coming down the hallway toward his room, and it's like, that's not something you hear, and he wouldn't have noticed it had he not been thinking about that incident,
Yeah.
and kind of the kind of working on that guilt of what he had done. And he knew he had to do it. It's not that he felt bad about killing a man. He felt bad about being in a position where he had to kill a man. That's not the kind of thing anyone can take lightly. And in so many stories, the people just brush right past that. Well, I did what I had to do, and they just move on. But there is a grieving process to even killing a stranger for anyone who has a conscience, who is not, some kind of pathological monster.
Mm-hmm.
And you see him, he's just kind of beginning this process, but because of those thoughts, he pays attention to the stealthy sounds. And otherwise, Matt's luck, they would have come in on him and killed he and Tom. But because of that, he was able to get his staff. And you kind of see a continuation of this. When they come through the door and he sees the knives, he hits the first one in the solar plexus hard enough to break off the tip of the sternum, shove it into the guy's organs,
Mm-hmm.
which takes a very hard, well-placed blow. But it's one of the differences between knocking the breath out of someone and killing them, is just that just right angle. But he heard his dad's voice telling him, son, this is a killing blow. Never do this unless it's your life or theirs. Which again reinforces how well he was trained in the staff. His
Yeah.
father trained him extremely well, but was also teaching him what not to do. It's very important. You never do this unless it's your life or theirs. It's a killing blow. So he hears that, his dad's voice, as he experiences that, and as he kills that man. And then just, as the guy, before he can even fall, Matt's kind of reaching over him and crushing the windpipe of the second one. And of course, it's so fast, just boom, boom, and it's done. But you still you get that little nugget of his dad's voice and the regret. And I think the quote there was, 2 men burn me, no, 3. I don't think I've ever hurt another human being before, and now I've killed 3 men in one night. Light. And of course, that's before he pulls on the cloak of one of them, goes up, tries to disguise his voice, and takes out another one at the tiller that we assume died. We don't know. He hit him in the head. Said it sounded like a melon busting, when he
Yeah.
pops him in the head with the staff. And then Tom saves him with that well-placed throw of the knife. So, yeah, very close calls there. And you
Mm-hmm.
see his luck in play in some of this. But I love being able just to see that humanity. You don't see the entire process, and this is something he's got to think through, because at the end of it now it's 4 people that he's killed.
Yeah.
And he never hurt a person in his life, but he was put in that position, 4 people in one night. And then as Captain Malia is talking about, ooh, that one's cold. Matt just kind of hears that back behind him as he goes to his quarters, sinks down to his knees, and just starts shaking. Which, of course, is the adrenaline and the nerves and the grief that he's working through of what he's had to do.
Mm-hmm.
And typical Matt, now he doesn't bring it up again, really, I don't believe, in the series.
Not that
He
I can
processes
remember.
it, he deals with it, and he goes on.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
for him it seems like he still doesn't take it lightly, but it seems like an easy answer in that,
right,
okay, when he was flashing back to his dad teaching him that move with the staff, he thought, it is my life or his right now.
right, right. Their knives make it that. Right,
yeah, he
exactly. Yeah,
quickly made that judgment call that his use of that lethal force was justified.
right,
And so he didn't, to him, that's not a philosophical question you need to keep mulling over, like, oh no, I've taken this soul, I wonder if this person's going to be reborn, am I going to be damned, so these types of
right.
questions that some people or characters might wrestle with. Matt is concerned certainly with the fact that he's killed people and he had never been violent before, but
Mm-hmm.
the other of our 2 Taviran boys have a really different relationship to violence. Matt is the one who seems to move on the best from it.
Yes, yes.
We got Perrin, who was primed to feel so conflicted about it in the first place because he had always been very careful not to accidentally hurt people just because of his size. So he was always very gentle. And then he had that time with the Tuathahan. So
Yes.
he has been exposed to this philosophy of radical nonviolence. And he's always going to be thinking about that. Like, man, he hates the Tuathalan in a way. Like the reason he's so argumentative with them is really because he wants to live in that kind of world where he could be a pacifist. And the pattern is pulling him to be something else. And so he's constantly wrestling with this. Am I going to have the hammer or the axe? Am I going to be violent or not? And he hates having to do it. And then with Rand, we've got all this baggage of, in his past life, having killed all of his family. And so
Right.
anytime he encounters doing violence against a woman or is indirectly the cause of a woman's death, he's like, Ilyena, my love. But, and so Matt doesn't have a lot of that, maybe because a lot of his past lives are of war. So he's got this foundation of knowing that he is capable of killing in self-defense and able to understand that his killing was in a context that's acceptable. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. It's acceptable to himself
Yeah.
and acceptable to society. I mean,
Yeah.
that was self-defense, but his definition, I believe, to him is more important than everyone else's definition or the legal definitions.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was that fact he knew he was forced to do it. He didn't seek this out, but he didn't hesitate either, and that yeah, this is really great things about it. But I like that RJ put these touches in there that Matt did have to begin this process of dealing with that.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something that just happened and he swaggers off and goes to sleep. You kind of get the idea he didn't sleep any that night.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's my own interpretation of it. But yeah, he definitely did not take that lightly. But he did deal with it. He did process it. He did it in Matt's way, not everyone else's way. But he did deal with that and process the gravity of what he had to do.
Yeah. Those are most of the notes I had about this chapter. Did you have anything else?
Oh no, we covered everything.
Okay.
So, all right, so I'll take us on with chapter 40 again from the Dragon Reborn. We find the town of Erangel sits right on the Aranon River, which the river was the border between Andor and Cairhien. And this city was overflowing with refugees from the Cairhien Civil War, people there who had lost homes and lost all hope. That's the situation that Matt and Tom find themselves in as they get ready to leave the ship. Captain Malia eyes them from the tiller. He had been unable to pry much information out of them and was unwilling to believe what little he had learned. Matt was convinced that the captain wanted to learn this information so he could go and tell their new High Lord Salmon about these spies in Andor or some type of alliance between Andor and the White Tower. Matt had, though, been able to win a decent amount of money off of him while dicing during their voyage. When Tom had commented on how much food Matt had eaten on the voyage, Matt admits that his incredible hunger had abated 2 days before. He had continued pretending to eat the food, though, and snuck out and thrown it overboard, something that he now regretted as he looked out into the hungry faces of the refugees surrounding the docks. Matt does give some coins to a woman who has 3 small children as she stood looking without hope for her husband to arrive. When Tom noticed this, Matt responded with, "What are you gawking at? Coin comes easily as long as I can find somebody who likes to dice." They go up to the town, question a guardsman, and find out that things are actually worse than they look at the docks. They also find out that Queen Morghese was going to cut off the flow of refugees on the next day. Everyone who tried to cross over would be sent back. That earned the reply from Tom of, "That does not sound like Morghese." They find an inn called the Riverman, where Matt had to bribe the owner just to get them a place to sleep in the loft. Matt offered him double that amount of money to buy 2 horses and tack, but the tavern owner refused to sell. He was having none of it. But seeing that the tavern owner kept some dice cups around, Matt tempted him to sell at that price with the phrase, "my one throw against your 2." And as you can imagine, in short order, Matt and Tom now owned a horse each, and were even able to buy some overpriced bread and cheese from the tavern owner. In the stable loft, Matt arranged some loose hay for a bed as Tom lit his pipe. And very soon a woman came sneaking into the stable carrying a bundle. She lit a lantern and began to eat some stale bread, and then quickly looked around when she smelled Tom's tobacco smoke. Just then 4 men also entered the stable and cornered the woman. They had obviously followed her there. The leader of the four gloated over Eludra and her secrets for a bit, and how he was going to kill her, which just gave Matt time to grab a rope and swing down, knocking the four to the ground. They got up holding knives. Tom called out and threw Matt's quarterstaff to him, and Matt quickly felled the four men. Eludra introduced herself to them and explained that she was an illuminator who was on the run, having been cast out of their guild. She had no money with which to reward them for saving her life, so she gave Matt a package of fireworks. Now, as the four men began to awaken, Eludra got ready to leave, and Tom asked her, "How did you light that lantern so quickly in the dark?" She responded cryptically that she had her own secret discoveries, and that one day, quote, "sticks will make my fortune for me," end quote. Then she left out into the night. Matt and Tom did the same.
Well, I have a few sort of funny notes before I move into the more serious character notes I have for this chapter. To start with, the fact that it's Eludra was really amusing to me as a first-time reader. I was not yet aware of just to what degree Robert Jordan was going to conserve characters. So
Right.
Eludra and Tammuz popping back up was a big surprise, just like Bail Doman when we see him keep coming up throughout the series. I'm like, really?
Yes,
It could have just been any guy with a ship, but it's him again?
yes, that one stood out to me even more than Eludra.
Yeah.
Beldoma did.
I remember the Great Hunt chapter where Rand is sneaking with Selene and Loyal and Huron around the Illuminator's chapter house. And it's their fault that one of the fireworks goes off at the wrong time because they use it to
Yes.
fight some Trollocs. And that starts a whole bunch of other mess in Kyrian, and it happens at the same night that the king gets assassinated, so it's all sort of wrapped up together in everyone's minds that the Illuminators must have had something to do with it. But I never thought we would see these people again. We just saw Eludra attribute the mistakes to Tammuz and verbally just berate him a whole lot, and I thought that was going to be the end of these characters. So to see them come up again was just funny. And I forgot until rereading where all Eludra does show up. So we meet her in Kyrian the first time. Matt meets her here, and then I think she becomes part of the circus later as well. Yeah, by the time the girls are in the circus and the Fires of Heaven, she's there as well. And then she becomes part of Matt's coterie, I guess you could say, once he joins the circus for a little while.
Had this not been the wheel of non-communication, as we all know that this entire series is, had any of them sat down and compared notes, they would have been amazed. Hey, this great big wide world, covering all these different countries and all these different places, and they all knew Eludra, just different times, different situations. I thought this was really fascinating. You're right, he does conserve characters in that way, which is amazing because you still have several thousand characters in these books, and yet you have some that crop up over and over again. And she serves very important parts of the story. I mean, at the end of this story, the things she does is very important. In fact, all the way to A Memory of Light, there are things she does throughout this that play a big part in this story, and it's almost as if had the things not went so crazy during the Great Hunt, at that point, none of the rest of these things would have happened. So you kind of see that Taveran effect, one of Rand kind of pulling her in with the accident there at the chapter house. Again, now with Matt pulling her in, just in fact, he even says something like, "Could you not have found another stable to die in?" It's almost like to him, even though he didn't know her. Well, how coincidental, you just happen to show up here and try to get killed when we're trying to sleep in the loft. Which, of course, is typical Matt. His comfort is worth more than your life. But at least the outward show of the things he's going to say.
I wonder, too, like you were saying, had the disaster of the chapter house partially exploding and everything not happened in the last book, if Eludra would have made the technological advancements that she does. You can tell she's already innovative. I mean, having developed matches when I think her colleagues had not done that. But if she had kept
Right.
a secure position in the chapter house, she might not have felt a need to do that, to try to be an entrepreneur and have to sell these things to make a living, because
Right.
she knew she was already disgraced and she couldn't just start an illuminated chapter house in another city or something.
Right. Or at least she would have probably stayed there, been comfortable, maybe shared the secret of matches within the guild,
Mm-hmm.
but it would have gone no further. I mean, you say
Yeah.
that at the very least, either that or it just wouldn't have happened at all. But certainly she would not have left and been a part of the story so many different ways had that incident not happened. I doubt even the war in Kyrian would have affected the Illuminators as much as it would have many other people.
I think too that, Matt sort of probably takes the credit historically for developing firearms, but Eludra was the
Yes.
engineer behind it the whole time, who really just gave Matt shopping lists
Right.
to make sure he could
Yes.
go get the supplies. And she's a fantastic engineer. I just didn't realize this early on that she had invented matches. I didn't really understand
Right.
what she was talking about the first time. and
Right.
I thought maybe she had come up with a lighter of some kind, like our little gas lighters we have now, because I thought there was some kind of liquid sound when it seemed like she lit the lantern too quickly, but maybe that was the oil in the lantern. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
It-
I didn't understand it at the first read through.
Yeah. In my mind, it jumped out pretty quickly because Tom even said when she lit it, he said quietly around the stem of his pipe, well, that was quick. She could have set the whole barn on fire using a flint and
Yes.
steel in here. And it kind of accentuated the fact everybody uses flint and steel, or they use the one power. And here she used something different that was very fast. So my mind immediately went to matches. But being an old Boy Scout, it would have, because I've used flint and steel. Let me tell you, I far prefer matches.
Mm.
They're
Yeah, I
so
don't
much
think I
faster and
fully
easier.
appreciated that nobody had matches yet. Yeah. But
Yes,
yeah.
yes. And let me tell you, flint and steel, it's not as easy to use as it is in the stories. So
Oh,
we'll
I
leave it at
bet.
that. Another little quote here, and I gave the quote when they were at the docks, and Matt sees this woman looking for her husband. Basically, she has the 3 children there with her, and he gives her some money. And of course, he said, kind of saw Tom looking at him. What are you looking at? Just I can make money. Money's nothing to me. And it's true. Money is nothing to Matt because he doesn't really have to work for it. He doesn't have to earn it. He can dice for it, and if he finds enough fools who want to be parted from their money, he'll take care of that for them. But then inwardly, he thought the second quote, bloody children's crying was getting on my nerves. That's all. Fool Gleeman will probably expect me to give gold away to every waif that comes along. Fool. And he wasn't sure if that last part was directed at himself or at Tom. So,
Mm.
and I kind of love the fact that he will analyze himself and analyze his own thoughts and his own motivations. And he may come to a different conclusion than you and I would, but at least he is analyzing himself. He's second guessing himself and his motivations on just about everything he does. Because everything to him is kind of a transaction or a barter situation almost. He doesn't want to get in the habit of being nice just so people can see him be nice. I think he would much rather have given her the money and nobody ever seen it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the fact that Tom saw it and that triggered him. To Tom's like, money's nothing. But then to himself, he's like, now Tom's going to expect me to do this to every hungry person I see.
It messes up his
And,
macho image.
yes, it does.
His
I love
roguish, I only care about myself. I'm not affected by things. I don't care about things very deeply.
that. And then in the stable, when Tom's talking about him, throwing the one throw that outdid the 2 that the tavern owner had thrown. Because, said something to the effect of the tavern owner after he threw this one and that one. Well, he knew there was no way you could win, and then you won. And Matt, his quote is, I win enough. And that's very true. Matt doesn't win every time.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't win every throw. Now, he had that one night, the previous night before he got on the ship, that he did win every throw. But that it's almost like the fever of the Tavernus, just had everything amped up higher than usual. It's almost like he was in a drugged state,
Mm-hmm.
with that the power or whatever it is that directs all of this, his luck. But he doesn't win every time, but he does win enough. And that's one of the great things about Matt. he's not perfect. He's not infallible, but he wins enough. And I think that was a real good quote there about him. And then the one where she gives him the fireworks, it's kind of payment, which of course is going to play a very important part in upcoming parts of the story. But she warns him about, don't cut these open. Some people want to cut them open and see what's inside. But some of these things can explode just by being exposed to the air, which I don't think is entirely accurate, that last
Mm.
part. I think that's a warning to keep people from trying to find out the secrets of it.
Mm-hmm.
But, so she gives him that warning, and he just says, kind of dryly says, I've heard that. And he had just gone over the memory of one time in Emmons Field as a child, having kind of stolen one of the fireworks, tried to cut it open to see what was inside. Mr. Alvear had cuffed him one good time. The lady who was the village wisdom at that time, I don't recall her name, I didn't write it down, but she switched him real good. And he got home and his father strapped him again. So he paid for that 3 times
Mm-hmm.
for that stupid mistake. And the only thing he says to her is, well, yeah, I've heard that.
And then nobody
And
talked to him for a month.
right, oh yeah, that's right. Thank you. Yeah, nobody talked because he almost screwed up all of it.
Yeah.
And
Which is so, that's so funny that, I mean, it's extreme punishment. So let's go ahead and say
oh
getting
yes,
whooped
yeah.
3 times for something and then shunned for a month. Like
Nah,
he said, even
well,
his own mother wouldn't talk to him, and only Rand and Perrin would, mostly to
right,
tell him what a
right.
dummy he was.
Right, right.
So,
And the month may have been exaggeration just in
yeah,
Matt's mind.
it could have
These
been.
memories, memories, the legend of what happened had to grow a little bit. But I'm sure, no one would talk to him, especially his other friends, for quite some time. And it was a knuckle-headed thing to do. But that's the thing about Matt. He does some stupid, knuckle-headed things that nobody else would think to do. But that's what makes him a hero when he's not a bloody hero. That's what makes him seem lord-like when he's not a bloody lord. He's just, he just wants to be himself, and the world just keeps getting in his way and won't let him just enjoy himself. That the entire time he does some very stupid, knuckle-headed things, like giving his left eye to save Moraine so she can help save the world, and all of these things are important, but he does what most people would shy away from. And
Yeah.
some of that's foolhardiness, but it's a reckless foolhardiness that keeps moving forward and doing the right things, even when nobody else sees it as being the right thing. Now, cutting open the fireworks was not the right thing.
But that's just sort of a
The,
side effect of the fact that he's going to be bold and curious and try
exactly.
things that nobody else will.
Exactly. And you've got to mess up a few times before you get on the right path. And you
Absolutely.
could definitely say that about him.
Well, that story just made me wonder if, I know you really like to tinker with things and that you were one of those kids who would take stuff apart to figure out how it worked. Did you ever get switched for taking things apart you weren't supposed to, or shunned by your village?
No, but my mother tends to bring up the story every so many years about the clock she bought for me, a little bedside clock. It was a Little Ben brand name, and I took it apart to see how it worked, and it never worked again.
Mm,
And that does get brought up at family get-togethers on occasion.
yeah.
So, in one sense, I still pay for that, and I don't remember being punished for it, and I don't remember taking it apart. But yes, I was always that curious child who wanted to see how it worked, and did not always understand how it worked, but I certainly wanted to.
Well, I think Matt even mentions taking apart a clock or a watch at some point, and he's like, I mean, I could have fixed it, and even if I lost some of the pieces, I bet Perrin could make them, because they're metal, right? He can
You're
do
right.
that.
I had forgotten that. I had forgotten that. Yes, yes, he did say that. Robert Jordan could put in some things that seems like everyone can relate to in some way. And we don't always relate to the same things,
Mm-hmm.
but there's something in there for almost everyone. And I love that about this series.
Yeah, I really like the stuff about Matt's morality and his image that you were talking about earlier, because I have a couple of notes on that as well. You talked about how he gave the gold to the family and then was sort of trying to justify to himself why he did that, and maybe calling himself a fool, or maybe calling Tom a fool for observing him do that. Another layer of irony to that was that Matt gave the gold to them right after he had said out loud how only fools in stories do something for nothing. So he complains about altruism being stupid. Why would you do something for somebody else with no benefit for yourself? Out loud, but he lives it with his actions.
Right.
He doesn't think too deeply about why he did what he did. You know, like you said, he came up with a reason, and he's always got some kind of justification to himself that
Oh, yeah,
still,
the kids were crying, getting
yeah,
on
yeah,
his nerves.
it's
Yeah,
still going
yeah.
to make him sound self-interested to himself. He's still trying to
Hmm.
build up that story of that being who he is, even though he's really not.
Yes,
So he's like, yeah,
yes.
he wanted to get rid of the annoying sound in his mind.
Right.
And so, like, I think, like I was saying earlier, it's like that if people were to see him care, it would ruin some kind of image, maybe, and it may even be an understanding he has of who he is, or more of who he wants to project being to other people. But I
Right.
think not only would it sort of soften his roguish exterior, but it would also be responsibility, because he did complain about how, well, now Tom's going to expect me to give gold to everybody who comes up asking for it, and
Right.
he doesn't want responsibility thrust on him, and so being seen to be a charitable person could then, he could be seen as responsible, and then who wants to do that, right? Then they're going to keep asking you to
Right.
do more stuff.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that's absolutely. So to Matt, duty is heavier than a mountain,
Oh yeah,
and
and
death.
he'll definitely avoid it. Yeah. It is, yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. He's not picking
he's
up any
got that
mountains.
now.
Why would you do that?
Right.
Blast
And
through it with some
and
gunpowder. There you go.
right.
Problem solved.
And death may be heavier than a mountain too for him, because he really dances away from Jack of the Shadows.
Yeah.
But duty is heavier than a mountain, and he is not dealing with it. Right.
He's one of the people with a better sense of self-preservation than some of his peers, for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, he doesn't want responsibility, and I kind of get this, because if you are known to be too dependable, it gives you more work. You know,
Yes.
if people
Yes.
know
That's
you to
true.
be the kind of person who's really good at your job and will kind of go the extra mile, they're going to ask that of you.
Right.
And
And expected. It just
yeah,
becomes the normal. Absolutely right. Yeah, he does not want that to become the
yeah.
normal in his life. That's okay. I hadn't quite looked at it that way, but I love it when you break down the personalities of our characters, because you do it so succinctly and so well.
He's a work smart, not hard kind of guy. And I
Right. Right.
have respect for that.
Yeah. Although there are some things that it's like he doesn't mind taking on.
Hmm.
when when he had the prophecy of marrying the daughter of the nine moons, and he asks every woman he meets, have you ever heard of the daughter of the nine moons? What does that mean to you?
Maybe so he can run
Or
away, though. As long as she says no, he's willing to still do whatever was already on the
yeah,
table.
yeah, everything's fine. But yeah, well, you're right. He doesn't tell his motivations. In my mind, I'm like, oh, he's looking for her. But no, maybe you're right. Maybe he's looking to get away from her, because he's not going to be bound by anything, even a prophecy. But until he kind of falls for the girl, and then finds out that's who she is, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
but anyway, a lot of great things about his story, a lot of great things about all of it, and we've got a lot of it to cover yet, just not today. I think we've about done all we needed to do today.
I think
Unless you have any
so.
further points. Okay.
No, that I think we covered it all.
So I hope all of our listeners will join us next week for episode 5 of season 2, where we hope, if the weaving of the wheel allows it, to delve into chapters 44, 45, and 46 of The Dragon Reborn.
Subscribe to us on Podbean, Stitcher, Google Play, Apple, Spotify, or YouTube under the name Lajara Dane if you'd like to stay updated on new episodes. For links to pretty much everything we put out on the web, you can visit our link tree at linktr.ee/Lajara. That's Lajara. You could leave us some feedback if you want to let us know how we're doing or engage in some discussion. You could start by rating and reviewing us on your preferred listening platform, wherever fine podcasts are procured, or by contacting us through email. That's lajaradane@gmail.com, on my Twitter, Lajara Sadai, or our website with the Contact Me tab.
Well, I hope everyone will join us next week for episode 5. Let me try that again.
But first, and I'll just edit this out, I didn't know you were gonna sort of rewrite the spoiler warning every time, and I really like that. I had just copied the one onto my notes from last time and that you had written, and
yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't pull up your notes. I just, you've been saying kind of write your own spoiler warning.
yeah.
So yeah, I've been trying to do something unique every time.
Cool.
So sorry about that.
Don't feel pressure to do that though. Just just know that there'll still be something there now. For the first few, I just was gonna let you write it, and then I was gonna copy and paste whatever you did after that.
Okay. All right.
So now I'll start with my actual summary. I think so. When Matt is trying to convince the dockmaster, or maybe it's actually the the captain. Hold on, I gotta look at it again real quick. Is it the dockmaster where he's talking to, or the cabin when Tom's like, I'm the one who's supposed to be drunk here?
Oh, it's when he's talking to Captain Malia.
Okay, so that because they had to go through 2 layers there, right? Okay.